Many people do not understand God's nature because we have a doing God and we have a speaking God. When God is doing, He expects you to look and observe what He's doing so that you can also be able to do what He's doing. Jesus said, "What I see my Father do, I also do." So which means you have to observe God in order to see what God is doing to be able to do. And I established this fact the last time. There are many people who want to hear the Lord speak, but they do not want to observe the Lord, what the Lord is doing. They are eager to have access to the speaking God. They want to hear what is the Lord saying. They want to have access to the voice of God, access to the speaking God, which He is speaking all the time. But there's an aspect of God, there's a nature of God that many people have not yet considered in their ministry. They want to become prophets, they want to become men of God. They want God to use them, but they only want access to the voice of God, missing the doing God. There are two major natures of God: a doing God and then a speaking God. So when the Lord is doing, He expects you to observe and do what He's doing. And when He's speaking, He expects you to hear Him and do what He asks you to do. So our generation have narrowed the ways of God to a speaking God. Everybody wants to hear what the Lord is saying, but no one wants to do what the Lord is doing. And that is the great and the grave mistake that we are committing in our generation, especially in the prophetic ministry. People here, they see, but they do not observe what the Lord is doing. And let me tell you something. When God is doing, He expects you to observe. And in our generation, God is doing more than the way God is speaking. There are some things happening around us. God is not speaking using His mouth, but He's doing. And He expects that whatever He does, we observe and do that same thing. Now, Jesus said, "What I see my Father do, that also I do." In other words, Jesus came and He manifested the true nature of God. The first nature of God was that He do what He see His fathers do. And the second nature of God was that He do what His Father asked Him to do. So which means they came together as two natures, but they all carry equal value. And as a prophet, there are days God will not be speaking, but there are days God will be doing. As a man of God, as a believer, there are days God will not be speaking, God will be doing. So you need to observe what God is doing in a generation to understand that this is God speaking. God can speak through doings. He can also speak through speaking. So you should not always wait for the voice of God that is a speaking voice, but you can also discern what the Lord wants you to do by observing what the Lord Himself is doing. There are things Jesus did not do. So whatever Jesus did not do as a prophet, you should not do. And there are things Jesus did, and whatever Jesus did as a prophet, you should do. So Jesus did not just come to die for us, but He came to correct most of the errors that were committed by the old prophets. For example, if Jesus was in the shoe of Elijah, if Jesus was on that mount and then the soldiers came to arrest Him, Jesus wouldn't have called down fire on the soldier. Why? Because Jesus corrected that error Elijah committed. When the soldiers came to Elijah, as a matter of fact, they were coming to invite Elijah to the king palace. So Elijah said, "If I be a man of God, let fire come down and consume you and your 50. Fire came down and consumed the military general and his 50. Another came, he consumed them. The third came and now begged Him to spare their life. When it was the case of Jesus and they were coming to arrest Him, Peter told Jesus, "Why won't we call down fire like the way Elijah did, so that this fire can consume these people?" And look at the words of Jesus. Jesus said, "You do not know the type of spirit you carry, for you do not carry the spirit of Elijah, but you carry the spirit of the Father." In other words, whatever Jesus did there, He expects every prophet to do. So we must observe the nature of God, the doings of God. What are the things that Jesus did in the Old Testament? And what are the things that He corrected? Some of the old prophets who came and did, how was they corrected by Jesus? If it was Jesus, after winning the contest against the false prophet of Baal, will He slaughter them or He will give them life? If it was Jesus on top of the mountain like Elijah, will He call down fire or He will show them love? If it was Jesus, will He remove a sword or He will put the sword back? So these are the doings of God, and it is the nature of God which has been ignored by many prophets in our generation. They want to hear, but they do not want to observe what the Lord did. And this is the greatest nature of God we can ever look at. If it was Jesus, will he rain down curses on the children in the case of Elisha? When the children were coming to him, he said, let them come, for theirs is the kingdom of God. For theirs is the kingdom of God. So whatever Jesus came and did in the Old Testament, whatever he did between the Old and the New Testament, that is Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, was for our example as prophets and men of God. And it is the nature of God that we must observe to be able to do whatever he was doing. It is God's nature we should observe to be able to do what Jesus was doing. So these are the doings of God. But many people are so interested in the speaking of God. I want to hear the voice of God. I want to hear the voice of God. But how many prophets would have feed the people? If it was not Jesus, will you feed people if they are hungry? As a prophet, if your members are hungry, will you feed them, or you will still behave like Elijah and the widow? There are many people who said the Elijah and the widow. Some of you have to bring your last flight. Stop misinterpreting scriptures and look at it. Was it Elijah or it was Jesus? Jesus didn't ask them to bring what they have before he multiplied it. Whatever the little child was having was enough, and he was able to multiply it so that he can feed the 5,000 men. Now, so you should normally ask yourself, who was the one speaking? It was Elijah. If it was Jesus, will he have done it differently? If yes, then do according to what Jesus did and not what according to what Elijah did. Elijah was fed by a widow. Jesus feed the widows. Do what Jesus did. Don't tell widows to feed you because you're a prophet. Jesus fed the widows. He fed the needy. So you must observe the nature of God and stop always trying to access God's voice.